A polynomial is an expression where variables have whole numbers as exponents, and the coefficients of the expressions are real numbers. So it's best to describe it with some examples. So a polynomial could be 2x squared plus 3, because the coefficient here are real numbers, and then the exponents are whole numbers. This is an exponent that's whole number. Technically, the exponent of this is of the second term in this expression is 0. So another example would be 3x cubed y to the 4th. That's actually one term. That's called a monomial. So non-examples would be like 5 divided by x. Okay, that would not be a polynomial because this is the same thing as 5x to the negative 1, and we need to have whole numbers as exponents. Another example would be 6x square root y, because the square root of y is actually y to the 1/2. That's not a whole number, so those are not polynomials. You can name a polynomial based on the degree and the number of terms. So the degree, what you're looking for is you're looking for the highest degree within a polynomial, and then you're looking at the exponent. So if you had x cubed minus 5x to the 4th, this term has the higher x, or the greater exponent, higher degree, so this is going to be degree 4, and we would call that a quartic. So degree 0 would mean that you don't have a variable with it, because it would be such as a number of 6, because technically -6, you can write -6x to the 0, because x to the 0 is just 1. So you can name it by degree and the number of terms. So if it has one term, it's a monomial. Binomial is 2 terms. Think of a bicycle, tricycle, trinomial. And then 4 or more is a polynomial. So if it has 4 terms, it's called a polynomial. If it has 5 terms, it's called a polynomial. If it has 6 terms, it's called a polynomial. So a polynomial will have 2 names to it. It will be named by the degree and the number of terms. So example 1 is degree 3. So we're going to call that a cubic, and it has 3 separate terms. Terms are separated by plus or minuses. So it's a cubic trinomial. And then the second one is degree 5, so that's called a quintic, and it has 2 terms, so that's called a binomial. And then letter C is degree 7 is a leading coefficient, so that's not really, we don't really have a name for it, so we're just going to call it 7th degree, and it has 4 terms, so it's going to be a polynomial. So 7th degree polynomial. So if it's 6th degree, 7th degree, 8th degree, and more, we're just going to name it by the 6th, 7th, 8th, etc. degree. To write a polynomial in standard form means that you want to get rid of the parentheses, combine like terms, and write it from highest to lowest degree. So we're going to classify it by its degree and number of terms, and we're also going to identify the leading coefficient, just go through that vocabulary, and the constant. So the first one, I'm going to combine 4x minus 6x, so that's going to be -2x plus 5. So the name of this, the degree is 1, so that's called a linear, and it's 2 terms, so it's going to be a binomial. And I'm going to also name the leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient is, if you write it in standard form, what's the number out front? So that's -2. So the leading coefficient is -2. And the constant is the number that doesn't have the variable with it. That's going to be 5. That's just going to be key vocab later on. Okay, letter B, I'm going to combine like terms. So I have 3x cubed and 2x cubed. So that's going to be 5x cubed. And then there's no other x squared, so it's plus x squared, and then minus 4x. So this is called, since it's degree 3, it's called a cubic trinomial. And then the leading coefficient is going to be 5, and because the 5's out front, and the constant is, there's actually not a constant because there's not a number that doesn't have an x with it, so the constant is just 0. Okay, letter C. I'm going to combine negative 2x to the 5th and 5x to the 5th. So that's going to be 3x to the 5th. And then 6 minus 17, or negative 17 plus 6, is negative 11. So this is called a quintic because it's degree 5 binomial, because it has 2 terms. And the leading coefficient is going to be 3, and the constant is negative 11. Okay, letter D. Now we start having to now there's some parentheses in here. So we want to get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to FOIL these two first. So it's going to be x times x, which is x squared. And then the outside is going to be minus 4x. And the inside is going to be plus 2x. And then the last is going to be minus 8. And I still have plus 6x plus 8. So if I write this in standard form, highest degree is x squared. And then negative 4x and 2x and 6x is going to, this is going to be negative 2x plus 6x, so it's plus 8x. So negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So it's 4x. These cancel out. And then I have negative 8 plus 8. Those cancel out. So if I write this, this is in standard form. So this is called a quadratic because it's degree 2. And then it has 2 terms. So it's a quadratic binomial. The leading coefficient is going to be 1. And the constant is going to be 0 because there's no number that does not have a variable with it. Okay, letter E, 2x plus 1 squared. Don't distribute the 2 through. What you want to do is actually write it twice. So 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 1, and then FOIL it. So FOIL is going to be 2x times 2x, so that's 4x squared. 2x times 1 is plus 2x. 1 times 2x is plus 2x, and then 1 times 1 is 1. So writing it in standard form, this will be 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. So to name it, this is degree 2, and it has 3 terms. So if it's degree 2, it's called a quadratic, and it has 3 terms, so it's a trinomial. The leading coefficient is 4. And the constant, the number that doesn't have, or the expression that doesn't have a variable with it, is 1. Okay, and the last one, this is the same thing as multiplying A times B times C. Or if you had to multiply 3 times 4 times 2. You can either multiply 3 times 4 first and then multiply it by 2. Or you can multiply 4 times 2 first and then multiply it by 3, because multiplication is commutative, which means the order doesn't matter. I'm just going to go from left to right here. So I'm going to multiply x times x minus 1. That's going to be x squared minus x. But since I'm multiplying this whole quantity by x plus 3, I'm going to keep that in parentheses. Now I'm going to FOIL this. So it's going to be x squared times x to the first, which is x cubed because you add the exponents, plus 3x squared. And then the inside will be minus x squared, and the last will be minus 3x. So writing this in standard form will be x cubed plus 2x squared minus 3x. And then this is called a cubic because it's degree 3. And then it has 3 terms, so it's a trinomial. The leading coefficient is 1. And then the constant, there's not a number that doesn't have an x, so the constant is just 0. So with the cubic, I actually get an A, B, C, and D value. So if I round to nearest hundredth, I'm going to have y equals 0.01 x cubed, because A is 0.01, minus 0.38 x squared, plus 3.54x, and then plus 58.96. So the question reads, use your model to predict the number of employees in 2020. So what do we need to plug in for x? Because 2020 is how many years after 1975? So I would do 2020 minus 1975, and I get 45. So we're going to plug in 45 in for x in our equation up here. So I'm going to press pause and plug that in my calculator. So that would be about 360 employees. Rounding to the nearest whole number, because we're talking about number of employees.